welcome back to the channel. Thank y'all for hanging with me on this Wednesday. So October is one of those months where the fishing is going to change quite a bit from September. In September, you still have a lot of fish that are relating to their summer pattern, offshore structure, and around the creek channels, humps, and the main river channel. And they're not just feeding on bait, they're on a spot that they probably spent the last couple months of their lives. Now, this time of year, the water has cooled off. The days have obviously gotten a lot shorter as well, and it is all about fall. But what I will say about the month of October and the success I've had all over the country, Kentucky Lake, Chickamauga, Lake Dardanelle, Gunnersville, is that the bass start to almost get in like a pre-spawn type pattern where they get shallow, they start relating to a flat, and they're typically going to be moving around on that flat, chasing gizzard shad, threadfin shad, or bluegill. But it seems like they've kind of made their home. They know where they're at, and they're going to start using the little ditches and drains in those small areas. So for that reason, you can kind of predict where they're at. Now, in the pre-spawn, you have a lot of indicators of what's happening. This time of year, you don't. So you don't necessarily know what's going to cause an area to change. But the positive of fishing in the month of October is if you find a spot where it's not getting pressured, it's a sneaky place where other fishermen don't know about it, you can typically go back there and continue to catch them for the next month and maybe even all through the winter, because the bait stops moving around a whole lot. It gets to a certain spot and it's not going to leave, and the bass won't leave either. So I'm going to give you my top 5 baits for the month of October, and these are all baits that I've caught them on all over the country, and I'm going to give you some of the specific situations and lakes that this has really worked. Maybe some of those places are near you or places you're going, but we'll start off with a topwater walking bait. Now, there's a lot of baits and a lot of topwaters that I throw in the month of October that aren't going to be in this video because, like a buzzbait or something, I always throw it. Now, November, I'm all about a buzzbait, and I will talk a lot about that in November. But I haven't really had any like super special days in the month of October that I can really think back on with a buzzbait. But a buzzbait's a bait I throw like 11 months, 10 months out of the year. So that's like a crankbait, a shallow runner. I just fish that all the time. That's always on my deck no matter what. So those are great baits that I'm going to be fishing this time of year. But these are some that really stand out to me. So the topwater walking bait, a super spook. This is something that I've done really well here on Gunnersville and Kentucky Lake. And back to what I was saying about when you find fish that are in an area, they're going to stay, and they're relating to a ditch or something in that small area. So it may be a big flat, and the whole thing may be 2 feet of water. But if you have a little deeper spot, that's where the fish are going to be. So you can kind of just park your boat there and continue to fan cast through the whole area. And if you find a place that's on the flat side of the lake, it could just be a little indention on the bank. It could be a pocket or the mouth of a creek. But when you find something, that's where the fish are going to stop. They're not going to go any further. So that can be a really good area for the next 6 weeks. I keep spook fishing very simple. You can throw a clear one. I know I've thrown a clear one a lot, but I've found doing this for a long time, chrome and blue on your sunny days, bone on your cloudy days, and that's it. Don't get too crazy. Now, if you get into some really different, unique watercolors, you get into some tannic water, you may want some chartreuse in there. If you get into some really clear water, you may want your oaky shads and stuff like that, where there's just a little bit more of a natural appeal. And it's going to be different on every lake, but a good place to start, chrome and blue and bone. Now, my next bait is going to be one you can throw in those same areas. It's going to be a fluke. Let's be real about October. The fishing's not getting any better. Most of the time it's getting worse. So it's going to be tough on those slick, calm, sunny days. You're probably not going to be able to catch fish on some of these other baits, at least not every day. So don't forget about your staple soft plastic jerkbait. I rigged this up with a 4/0 extra wide gap hook. I've done a lot of videos on that. There's not too much to say about this. This gets bit. Now, again, when I'm talking about these fish are almost in like a pre-spawn mode, you could have cover on your lake. You could have hydrilla, milfoil, eelgrass. And these fish have been flipped for. These fish have been frogged pretty hard the last couple months. And if you live further north than Florida, the grass is going to start dying this time of year. So it seems like all those bass that were up in that heavy cover, they needed the shade because the water's still hot in the month of September. They have kind of pulled out to that edge. So there's a phenomenon that happens sometime in the month of October where those bass leave the cover and they just kind of come out. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Cover's dying, it's getting smaller, and they're not so concerned about the shade. They don't need that cooler water when the whole lake's starting to chill off. So that's when I turn to your staple casting bait. So a lipless and a chatterbait. These are really good baits to interchange. Lots of wind, but you can go back and forth. You can go through an area with this bait, catch a few, wait for them to stop biting, come back with the chatterbait. So you don't necessarily need a whole lot of wind. You don't need all these crazy conditions. These are baits that just get bit. Everyone that fishes shallow knows how good these are. There's a ton of fish shallow. There's a ton of fish that are suspended. So your yo-yos, burn it, kill it, lift it off the bottom. Don't be afraid to fish it high in the water column when you get shallower than 5 feet. But these are really good baits to just search. This is a lot of what I do this time of year is just go looking. So the topwater thing's not the deal. These are going to be my two baits. There's a lot of ways to fish them. They imitate bait fish. And with the chatterbait, it's typically going to be smaller trailers. This is the time of year where I don't necessarily like those big, huge trailers. Your 4-inch swim baits, your Zako. I don't go any bigger than that. That's like a 4.5-inch. Shad patterns for the most part, but you can still catch them on bluegill patterns as well. But I really like these shads, your whites, really good this time of year. So that just seems like something that has happened to me. Chickamauga, for instance, when you have grass on that fishery, those bass start to come out. Same thing happens here on Guntersville. They've been fished for hard in the grass. That's where they've been the last few months. So now they're starting to utilize the edge, get back in those drains and ditches and get on that outer edge relating to the structure. And that's probably where the bait is just going to stay for the next couple months. And you'll see guys up there frogging and flipping, trying to catch them like they were when the water was 10 degrees warmer. It just seems like a lot of that fish get pulled out. Now, back to the dying grass. You're also going to see lily pad fields die. So lily pad fields, a great place to fish in the late summer, dog days, hottest part of the year, and the early fall. Now, once we get into the real fall, that lily pad field is going to start to die. It's going to become stems, and you're going to have a lot of those fish left over in those areas. Now, they don't get hit because this isn't your typical fall pattern. Most guys are going to be out running channel swing banks with the spinner bait and doing all that. You may find that big lily pad field that's been getting hammered for the last month or two now has a lot of fish left in it that are a lot easier to fish for. So this is one of my favorite ways. I did a video about this a couple months ago about this is going to beat a frog 90% of the time. This is one of those times. So this is a Big Bites cane thumper. I rigged this up on 50-pound braided line with a 4/0 super line hook. And you can either screw in a weight or just do like a 16-ounce weight and peg it. But this rigged up Texas style and swimmed around, fished through those lily pad stems can be a great way. And these are typically going to be in like a foot of water. I mean, 2.5 feet, 3 feet at tops, but you want to look for those really shallow ones, and you can sometimes catch the biggest bags. This is something I did on Dardanelle a long time ago, and there was a decent bite in the creeks fishing around channel swings and just fishing your typical fall pattern, but we found a big group of fish in these lily pad fields. So it's one of those things. These are baits that I've caught them on Guntersville quite a bit this time of year. You know, you can use these in those same areas that everyone's frogging and flipping, and that bite just continues to dwindle. And that's where that little swim bait. So I caught them on this brim color. So you can throw a shad pattern if you have the conditions for it. There's a lot of brim left over, and they're going to be in those areas. So you just have a ton of cover. It's all falling apart. It's all going away. Could not only be the submergent vegetation, but also your emergent vegetation. And then you have fish that are kind of trickling out. They want to stay in those areas because there's probably food for them, but they're not going to be where they were the last month. They're not so much concerned about the shade. Now, I will say one more thing. Those are my 5 baits. But here is something that has happened to me a lot. You think you can pattern fish this time of year, and what I've witnessed is you'll find a creek. There'll be some fish in it. There'll be some bait in it, most importantly, and you will go down the river or the lake a quarter of a mile to the next creek, may look exactly the same, and get in there, and there may be no bait in it. There may be no bass in it either. So that's one of those things where it's hard to pattern fish this time of year. These areas have been where I've always done the best, and that's, I don't know why. Maybe that's just the type of fisherman I am, but it just seems like areas become a big part of this time of year. Bait related, obviously. Try these 5 baits in the month of October. Hopefully, it'll work for the next 6 weeks to 3 months. Good luck to you. I'll see you on the water.